Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris O'Connell. I'm an application engineer here at Nline Analytics. And this is just a little outline of what we're going over today. As you can see here, we're talking about color presets, clustering, and charts. Color presets, what are they? Color presets are a visual tool inside of Nline which allows a user to create a color scheme that better represents their data or trendables. This can aid the inspecting engineer in determining things like hotspots, defect severity, as well as maybe the significance of the data provided. Color presets are controlled using this dropdown from either a model view or a chart inside of Nline. Here's a blown up view of that menu from slide number 5. From this dropdown, you're able to select an already existing preset, create a new preset, or if you currently have one selected, you can edit or clone that preset as well. Cloning just makes an exact copy of the currently selected preset. This is showing you the color preset editor window. For those of you who are in our dataset class, this should look slightly familiar as the functionality is very similar. You have a column of available fields on the left that you can either double click or click and drag into the color preset window on the right. When you do that, a detail screen will appear and ask you to fill in some additional information about the rule. What you're essentially doing here is programming the system to display the data that you need in the way that you want it. It's a very user-friendly and intuitive environment. Here we can see the rule details window blown up a little more. On the top, you can see there has to be a condition given to enable this color. You can either hard code these or allow a user to input the values. On the bottom right, there's a shape option available. If you choose this, you can specify the shape and size of the data point to be displayed. On the left, there are options for the color scheme. You have an interior as well as an exterior color to help differentiate the data. Just gives you a little bit more flexibility with how you want to display these points. There's also a use single color option as well, if you just want it to be like solid blue or orange. Let's say there's a field you want to create a color preset for, but there's a really wide range of values you need to take into account. In this case, you might want to use our auto color tool to automatically assign colors based on their value within a set of data. This is really useful when you don't want to spend time assigning values to a color manually. There are also multiple color schemes for this tool to better suit your needs. These schemes can be reversed or mirrored depending on what contrast your users actually want to see. So order matters here. If you have a value that falls into one or more rule criteria, the earlier rule takes priority. It's just the order of operations of our color preset tool here. So we have an example problem here. First, we're going to open up Nline. We're going to run our default data set up here at the top. So we have some trendable points. Now what I'm going to do is create a new color preset. I want this preset to show me a few of the different defects that we have in different colors so we can highlight what issues we commonly see on this aircraft. So I'll come up here to the top under our color preset menu, and I'm going to create a new color preset. We're going to give this a name. I'm just going to give it something generic, something like week 4 class example. Now, I want to run this color preset against my trendable types. So all I'm going to do is click and drag this trendable type from my available fields over here on the left to the color preset over here on the right. And what it does is it comes up with this rules details window. So in here, I'm going to type in crack because I know that we have a few crack trendables already loaded onto our model. So what I'm going to do under the style details, just say we want green. I do not want to use a single color, so I'm going to uncheck this box. And I want it in the shape of a square. I'm going to blow this up a little bit so we can see it easier on the model. So I'm going to bump that up to size 11 and hit OK. Now I'm going to do the same thing for dents. All I'm going to do is double click this trendable type. It does the same thing as click and drag. So again, this is very intuitive, very easy to use. So for trendable type, this is going to be for dent. And I believe that that example problem wanted this to be purple or magenta, I guess. We'll click that. I do want to use a single color, so we're going to leave that. And I believe it said triangle for the shape. Again, I'm just going to blow these up so we can see them easier. I'm going to hit OK. And the example said all other trendables should be blue. So where it says default, I'm just going to double click that. It's the same thing. I'm just editing what was already here. For this, I'm going to say we want to use a single color. Instead of red, we're going to go blue. And I'm going to bump the size up a little bit. I'll hit OK. I'm going to save this and then apply it right from the screen. And then close this. You can see this has already been applied. Okay. So looking at this, you can see we've got some cracks around the landing gear, as well as a decent amount of dents over here on the right side of the aircraft. There's a few other blue trendables sort of scattered throughout, but it gives you a much better idea of what is occurring on what area of the aircraft. Okay. Again, we have a few other examples in here. There's a lot of different ways that you can use this tool. It all depends on how you want to set it up. For instance, we also have this crack severity example where you can see this crack trendable by the length. You can use this for sort of determining the significance of a crack, what have you. We also have an example in here for tail numbers. You want to see specifically what trendable information you have for a specific aircraft. You could do something like this, and you can see all of the information easily for different aircraft. Okay. We're going to get into our clustering tool next. Much like the color presets, these are another visualization tool to help engineers identify areas on the model that may have a lot of defects or NDI findings, and using that information to determine the significance of an issue or find precedents for repair. So this slide is referring to our 2D clustering tool, which when activated, the tool will group trendables in the view window by location and mark them with a white box and a count of how many trendables are contained inside that area. You can see some clustering here with the white boxes around the areas where trendables are recorded. We can adjust the threshold right underneath where we activated that tool. This will increase the size of the area for all of our clusters. I also want to note here, this tool is not just a surface tool. It's actually looking through the model. So depending on the angle of the camera and if there are internal defects, it will account for those as well. This is showing our 3D clustering tool. This gives the user a bit more autonomy with how data is displayed, with allowing changes to the scale and size of the cluster. To turn on 3D clustering, you'll need to open the cluster tab on the far left and click the lightning bolt icon near the top. This slide is from Nline version 6.11, which some of you may still be on. So I thought I'd point out that in version 7.1, right above where it says algorithm here, we actually have users select the data set they want to run clusters against, so you have more control over the data that you're seeing. After you select your data set and run the clustering tool, you'll populate this list on the left-hand side with all the clusters. From here, you can see the location of the cluster as well as how many trendable points are contained within it. If you click on one of these clusters, it will highlight in the model view on the right-hand side and select all of the trendables contained within it. The settings at the bottom of the screen determine how inclusive the clusters are. The larger the radius, the fewer clusters there are, but the more trendables that will be contained inside of them. These aren't on the PowerPoint, but the scale tool here will control the size of the spheres relative to the number of trendables inside of it. The member threshold is the minimum number of trendables within a radius of each other to become a sphere. The show count tool will show the number of trendables in the cluster on the 3D model. You can see those here in the picture. For instance, this one says 17, and the show member line tool will display a line from the trendable to the center of the sphere. So this double X icon up here at the top will clear all of your clusters from both the list on the left and the model view on the right. So charts. Anybody who has ever used Microsoft Excel knows what a powerful tool a chart can be. You can use these to better visualize data and help convey the meaning of your findings better to somebody that might need it. In Nline, we have a whole charting tool to help you with this. To get started, you'll need to open a new chart window using the icon near the top, right up here. So by default, the charts plot data from all the trendables that are currently in Nline. You'll have to run the data set for data to appear. So new to 7.1, we have colored presets available in the charting tool. So you can use those same color presets that you have set up elsewhere in the system here. To view a chart, you will select it from the drop-down menu here on the right-hand side of the screen. The menu at the top right of the charts window allows you to save the chart as an image, print it off, or copy to the clipboard. These options just give you a little bit more flexibility when trying to get the chart out of Nline. Under the menu next to the chart selection is where you will create new charts, edit or clone the selected chart, or open the chart selection dialog window. The dialog window allows you to search and filter through already created charts. This is especially helpful when you have a lot of different functional areas using the charting tools. So this is the chart details window. This is what will appear when you select to create or edit an existing chart. Over on the left-hand side here, you can see we have our available chart types to include some of the more standards that you would expect, like bar graphs, pie charts, and scatter plots. Here you can see a more in-depth view of the chart details window, including the chart name, whether the chart is private or public, and the chart details. Now, it's worth noting here that the info at the top is consistent across all the different types of charts. This is just some header information every chart will need. But down below in the chart details is where there will be differences between the chart types. These differences just amount to the specific requirements for a given chart type. For instance, you wouldn't really need an XY coordinate for, let's say, a pie chart, but that's something you would want on a bar graph or a scatter plot. So we have another example problem here. This is asking us to create a pie chart to display the different trendable types, as well as a histogram to display the location of discrepancies. So we're going to start with the pie chart. I'm going to go ahead and open up Nline here. I'm going to open up a new chart window up here at the top using this icon. And I'm going to open up my chart drop-down menu at the top up here. So from here, I'm going to select Create New Chart. And I'm going to give this a name. Again, we're just going to make it something simple, like week 4 example chart. This will need an associated data set. I already have a data set created. I just called it chart DS. It just lists out some of our defects that we have for trendables in there. So I'm going to leave the share type as private. It doesn't really matter. This is a standalone. If it was something that I wanted to make available to my entire enterprise, I would make it public so that everybody could use this. And that pretty much does it for the header details. Next, I'm going to select the chart type over here. And you can see that our details down here at the bottom actually change. So we're going to call this pie chart trendable types. And then since this is a pie chart, we really only have one category of information that we need to narrow it down to. So I don't want the bolt hole, eddy current recheck. I actually just want trendable types so that we can get a good idea of what percentage of defects we're actually seeing. So I'm going to save this. And you can see here, this is actually set on our default data set, so it's showing all of our trendable types. If I switch this to a different data set and run this, this data set was just created to show us more of our defects. So you can see here we have cracks, corrosion, dents, and then NDI findings down here, just giving us a percentage of all the different trendable types that we have. Next, we're going to create a histogram for the location of different defects. So the process is very similar. We're just going to click up here at the top and create a new chart. Name is going to be something similar. We'll just call it week 4 histogram. The associated data set is going to be chart. Again, I'm going to leave the share type as private. I'm going to select histogram. So up here at the top, the title, I'm just going to change week 4 histogram. And then we have to give it an X and Y axis. So on the X axis, I want to give it our location. So we can see where the aircraft, our trendables, are actually coming from. For this, I'm just going to call it location. And you can give it specific interval count, or you can give it a manual range here. I'm not going to do that. And then the X axis, I'm going to label that as number of trendables. I'm just going to save this off. You can see because we already ran our data set, it has all the information it needs. You can see that interval down here is 10. And this is our location on the aircraft and the number of trendables at each of those locations.